I'm Scott Allen Miller. It is the 31st of July, 2023. This is my vlog of daily life living in Nicaragua, and today we're doing a little bit different on the show. We're going to be skipping the bump and going back to an older format where I do everything in a single take and minimize the editing. I have a feeling I need to be doing this from time to time because I get behind on the show, and the editing, I don't know if you guys realize, but sometimes can take 4 to 6 hours after I film the show. And filming the show takes at least as long as the show is, and often about 2 to 3 times that long, just depending on a number of factors. So trying out a few different things today because I'm so far behind for reasons I'll explain in just a minute. I'm also, just for everyone's note and for my own reference when I'm looking at this later, I'm filming this on the GoPro 9, not the 11, but I have cranked it up to 5K instead of 4K, which I really never do, and I'm on a tripod. So I turned off a bunch of the unnecessary settings, and we'll see how this looks. Does it look better, look worse, and how does it overall turn out for the GoPro 9 for indoor filming for this one-shot kind of stuff. So we're skipping the bump. Let's get to our first topic. So today is our second day of doing our first private tour with Relocate Nicaragua, which is really just people coming to me to get private tours, but with the idea of not doing traditional tours like tourist activities, which of course we could do. I'm not going to say that we wouldn't do that if someone's interested in that, but that's not really my specialty. The thing that makes me a little bit different is that I can really help, I think, take people around and give kind of a context and set of very customized tours for the purpose of deciding, for example, which part of Nicaragua you might be interested in, or what villages make sense, what cities, or even does Nicaragua make sense for you compared to several other countries. I have a very broad experience having lived in many countries and having been to many others and researched many. I can really put a lot of things together, both inside Nicaragua and regionally. So that's kind of the idea of the tour. And the tour today is the second day of this first one that we're doing. And what we're really focused on is a combination of, is Nicaragua right for the couple in question? And if so, where in Nicaragua should they be looking to get the best experience for their needs, right? So we have to assume that we're looking at Nicaragua, although there's a lot of discussion going on whether that's true. And so we're trying to get to exactly where we need to be. Now, yesterday, we did a number of the beaches in Carazo, and then at the end of the night went up to Las Bonitas, which is one of the 2 core Leon beaches. That's one of the what we call the city beaches, because they actually fall into the city zone. So that's where they spent the night last night, getting up this morning. Because they're there, and I mean, everyone knows from my show, I live in that zone. That is the beach that I live on. So I stayed at home. I didn't have to get a hotel. So that was very convenient, just worked out that way. But then today, they had a relaxing morning, spent some time actually with some of my team out on the beach, and got a different perspective on the locality, on Nicaragua in general. And then we actually had some problems making contact this morning, which is going to lead us to my second discussion point for the day about communication. So wait till after the talk of the tour. We're going to talk a little bit about cell phones, specifically Verizon here in Nicaragua, or for traveling in general. And so it took a little while for us to make contact. Around 11 o'clock, we were able to coordinate, and then Marcella and I went down to the beach to meet with them, to get them, and then we're heading out to do a little bit more beach stuff today, in addition to the just getting to know Las Bonitas and Ponaloya, which are combined beaches. So we got down there, and we were able to do get moving pretty well. They were able to do breakfast and stuff, and we were able to do breakfast, and we were able to get moving decently well in the middle of the day. So we're starting kind of late, and both yesterday, the incredible amount of driving, and today, the getting started late, has really kept me from being able to record while we're doing the trip, or having daylight free time to record during, like, there's not a single moment because I'm the driver. At some point, I hope these tours have a driver and it's not me, so I can focus on a million other things and have someone else focus on parking and getting us from place to place. But right now, I'm providing the vehicle and I'm the main driver, so it is what it is, but it makes it impossible for me to do additional things throughout the day. So it makes keeping up with this show really hard. So yesterday we basically went from when we woke up until midnight, right? It was just an all-out day. Today, we had a little bit of time in the morning, but we were scrambling to get things done, and I was trying to fill things in for work. I had customer emergencies, so luckily I was able to get to those this morning. Because that would have been a disaster had I been completely unavailable. So it worked out, but it just didn't give me any free time. And then today we did the same thing from the moment we were able to get out the door until it was like midnight. There was just no free time. So we started off by driving Las Piñatas and getting more of a feel. They've been there, but we went around and explored it some and got lunch at Puesta del Sol, which is the Italian restaurant, more or less across the street from the Simple Beach Lodge and Playa Roca. It's in that little zone. It's what we call the bend within the loop, right? The loop is the southern end of the beach. There is a loop around road. Most of the beach is just a straight line with no side roads. And at the southern end, there's a loop. And the biggest hotels, the most activity, the biggest conglomeration of restaurants, the most beach stuff, the rocks, all of that is located on the loop. It has so much more density, so much stuff going on. It's where the village is, and all the famous stuff is located there, except for the Malecón. That is the far northern end of the beach of Las Piñatas. So we toured around that, but we went to Puesta del Sol and got lunch there before we really got started for the day. And of course, their food is always fantastic. If you're going to be there, be absolutely sure to check that out. Everyone who knows the beach is like, of course we eat there all the time. But if you are new to the beach and you're trying to make your plans, that is one of the restaurants you absolutely have to eat at. My personal favorite, I think, is their spinach ravioli. Absolutely amazing. And so did that, great lunch, really, really good. Did this drive around, got a real feel, and it was actually really useful just driving around and doing kind of a narrated tour of the beach. And then we drove up to Ponaloya, which is connected beach to the north, did all of that, drove the whole residential zone, went up to the restaurant zone, which is the far northern point, and they got a feel for that. And we're really easily, both yesterday, they were able to say of the beaches we looked at, La Boquita was like really stood out. They liked Huehuete, but Boquita was like, ooh, Boquita. And we had the same feeling. When we looked at it 3 years ago, Boquita really called to us as an interesting option. It's a cliff-based beach instead of a sand-based beach. So it gives you a very different take on Pacific Coast living. And for a lot of people who are if you're not actually looking to sit out on the sand, that can be a lot nicer. So maybe an option for a lot of people. And so we did the same thing, and they were able to say, ooh, Ponaloya is nice and all, but Las Piñatas, definitely more their feeling, which is exactly, again, how we felt about those when we looked at them 3 years ago and why we ended up on Las Piñatas. So there's a lot of affinity between what they're looking at and what we felt about the beaches when we were making the choices ourselves. We then decided to take a ride because we did have some time and not a real specific agenda, but they were really getting the feeling that the León zone is what made more sense for them. And for a lot of people, the fact that, I've said this a lot, that León, the city, lies so close to the beaches, almost all of the León beaches, compared to any of the other cities, is a really significant factor. It completely changes the decisions about looking at and moving to a beach or a beach area between that and other departamentos. Managua and Carazo have very long drives between their metropolitan areas and their beach areas. And so simple tasks like running to a grocery store or going shopping or going out to a club can be quite difficult, whereas most of the León beaches have a less than an hour trip back into the city, and some, like Las Piñatas, can be as little as 12 minutes. And so that's a totally different thing. You can take a taxi ride without planning from Las Piñatas and Ponaloya into León. It may cost a little bit extra. It's about $8 currently, but that's not bad at all. A little bit under $8 typically. And during the day, you might get down to like $6, but pushing it can be over 10. Like that's kind of where it is. And at night, you pay just a little bit more. It could be as high as 15. It's like the absolute highest. And that's a big number for a taxi ride in Nicaragua. But I'm just walking out of a club, grabbing a taxi and going. And so that's important consideration. Whereas if you're in Boquita, if you're in Huehuete, you're in Pochimil, you really can't do that. If you're going to get a taxi, it's going to be outrageously expensive, like 3 or 4 times that price at least. If you can even get one, you would need to hire a private car in most cases, which is doable, but is a completely different endeavor and makes going into the city a completely non-trivial, non-casual event. So that's a major change in how you look at the beaches. So we've already looked at the beaches that are just 12 to 15 minutes away. Now we're going to the Loop beaches, which is the next group south. Now, technically, there's Ponaloya and Las Penitas. Then there's the one independent beach of Salinas Grandes. We have a whole episode on that. Go watch it. We skipped it today for all the reasons that we talk about in that video. It is very inaccessible, completely doesn't meet their needs in any way whatsoever. And even though it's physically closer to the city, it's logistically twice as far away. So we continued on to Puerto Sandino via the Rotunda and at Izapa, the Rotunda at Piedras Blancas, went west out to Puerto Sandino, zipped through the village, didn't stop there at all because that's a port village and does not meet any of the things they're looking for of kind of beach living with fishing. So we continued on to Miramar, which is an absolutely stunning beach, very, very nice, would remind you of Ponaloya, but more curved. Like, it's not a bay, but it's a curved beach instead of the very straight beach of Ponaloya, but it has the kind of construction that Ponaloya had maybe 10 to 12 years ago. So it's a bit behind in beach development. We expect that its prices are likewise 10 years trailing, so probably more accessible, more affordable, more things available. It has a lot of spaces where you would potentially buy a very old house and turn it into, like, tear it down and turn it into something. In many cases, it has a nice restaurant. We've not eaten at it, but it seems like a very nice restaurant there on the beach. El Gallo Griton, I believe, is the name of it. And there are some comedores. There's some people selling fruit and stuff. It has some activity. It is very quiet, but not horrifically remote. It is decently far from Leon. You're looking at much more like, I think, 45 minutes to get back to the city instead of 15 from the other beaches. But it has Puerto Sandino, which is a major village just 5 minutes away. And so you get kind of this blended, well, you can step up to a large village, much larger than Las Penitas or Ponaloya, and get some restaurants, get some services there. And then you would go to Leon slightly less often, but it does isolate you a little bit more. So it's all about determining how that blend works for your lifestyle. We then continued on to Velero, which I don't think qualifies as anything for them. It's not what they're looking for. It's not a fishing beach. It's not going to have that feel, whereas Miramar still has fishermen putting in boats and going out to sea to go fishing. Velero is a modern, up-and-coming resort-style beach, but notably, it is resort style for Nicaraguans. It is not targeting expats. It's not targeting extranjeros and foreigners, which gives it a really interesting vibe that I actually enjoy quite a bit, because normally when you get this type of feel with Grand Pacifica, for example, you're getting enclave living, and you're typically on a beach that works very hard to separate itself, to distance itself from the rest of Nicaraguan society. And that's not a bad thing. It may be what you're looking for. There's nothing wrong that some people want to live here and do their own thing. That's fine. But it completely takes away the you're in Nicaragua feeling. You're not getting Nicaragua food. You're not getting Nicaragua culture. You're not mixing it in with other places. You're getting this super isolation feeling. At Velero, there's a tiny bit of that isolation feeling just because it is such a world apart, because it is basically resort living, but because it's Nicaraguan resort living for Nicaraguans, at least that's how it is now, it gives a more inclusive feeling. We can just drive right in and everything still feels like Nicaragua. It feels like we went into a high-end gated community in Managua, and suddenly we're on a beach and everything is still in Spanish. The menus don't switch to English or anything like that. They don't switch to American food or anything like that. They just go to really high quality Nicaraguan food with Nicaraguan music and Nicaraguan families. And I've seen, in more than one time having been there, I've seen zero obvious foreigners anywhere in the place. And that makes it really exciting that this may be the type of high-end living that we often associate with expat enclaves, but are targeted at and available to practically, in a practical sense, to Nicaraguans, which would be fantastic. So we're excited about that from that perspective. We're going to be keeping a close eye on the development at Velero because it has a lot of potential for people in my audience specifically, because it may provide that kind of quality level that some people look for without the enclave experience that some people certainly look for, but there's a tendency in my audience to not be looking for that. Some of you are, and that's absolutely fine, and Grand Pacifica is a great example of where that might make sense. But when you're looking for the physical architecture, the physical logistics of what we often associate with enclaves, but you want it to be Nicaraguan neighbors and be completely immersed in Nicaraguan society, then Velero may fit a really interesting niche. And it's not that far from us here in Las Piñas, and it's not far at all from León, and it's only maybe 8 minutes from Puerto Sandino, and it's really close to Miramar. So it has its own stuff, and pretty soon it's going to be connected to Tránsito, which is going to make for a really interesting zone, and León's going to grow significantly as that all starts to take off. Right now, Velero still has a lot of construction underway, so what's going on today is really cool and interesting, but what's going to be there tomorrow in, say, 2 years is, I expect, really going to be astounding. So we're going to be checking that out on a regular basis. I'm planning on pretty soon just grabbing Dominica and going down there and doing some filming because she hasn't gotten to see it yet. So it'll be cool to take her down, maybe take the kids. But so we went there. That was a big lead up to. We went there and went to the Triton, which is the one major restaurant at Velero right now. And the place is fantastic. We went there in an episode a month or two ago. And if you're going to be in the area, certainly check it out. Very quiet. Very much feels like a Disney resort if it was in Nicaragua. It doesn't have the theming and stuff, but it has hotel rooms, it has party rooms, it has office space, it has like all these really cool things. It has multiple layers overlooking the ocean in big modern structure. Everything's super modern, very fancy, incredible attention to detail, really good service and everything. We decided just to get snacks because lunch at Puesta del Sol had been not that long before and very significant. Like we got big portions. So we were mostly all full, but we wanted a little bit of something and we wanted an excuse to hang out at the Triton. So we just ordered coffees and ordered tostones con queso, which is a very Nicaraguan food. I want to do an episode actually on them because it's a food that I think Americans will really struggle to understand what it is. And seeing it and kind of digging into it would be like, oh, that's a thing you may or may not like. Here's why, and like you get to know it. But it's a menu item that often people do enjoy, but they stay away from because they're not really clear what it's supposed to be like, when to order it, whether or not they would like it, whatever. I avoid it a lot just naturally for those exact reasons, even though I know that I consistently like it and I like different ways that it's prepared. Recently, I've discovered a number of places I like a lot. Gecko's does a decent job. Ron Conrolas in Managua does a fantastic job. And specifically, the Triton at Velero is really, really good as well. Their cheese is fantastic. So we tried that, and our guests really liked it as well. They were very surprised. They were like, what is this? And then they tried it, and they're like, oh, this is pretty tasty. I like this. So it's just one of those things, and it's available pretty much anywhere in Nicaragua. So knowing if you like it or not is a really important piece to just having access to more menu items as you go around the country, because almost everywhere is going to have that. And it's just a very repetitive food culture. So if you miss something really major on the menu that you would like and you skipped it, it can impact you a lot. So we did that, had a beautiful sunset there over the ocean. And then once the sun went down and it was dark, we left the restaurant and drove back through León and back out to Las Piñas. Everyone is a little bit tired, and they wanted some time to hang out and enjoy the beach. We had a lot to do getting the videos out for the day, almost impossible, so we had to get back and do that for me. And then tomorrow, we're going to be doing a ton of driving as well. Tomorrow, we're taking them back to San Juan del Sur with maybe some extra stuff in that we don't know what all we're going to be doing, but we know we have to go all the way to San Juan del Sur and all the way back. That means I have an absolute minimum of 8 hours of driving tomorrow because it's 4 hours to San Juan, 4 hours back, plus any of the other activities that we do. Plus, I have to go to the beach at the start of the day. So it's at least a 30-minute kickoff of driving before the 8 hours. So 8.5 hours, absolute minimum. Plus, we have to do meals. Plus, we have to do any additional sightseeing or whatever. So we know tomorrow is going to be epic as well. So we got them to the beach, and then we had friends who were staying on the beach. If you watch the episode from the Managua Ipico, if you haven't watched any of my episodes, come on, get back there, watch some of the old episodes. That stuff really helps with the channel for real. Like, even if you guys have watched them and you're like, got your TV on and you're like, oh, I'm not really watching, but I could put on one of Scott's old episodes, make sure I've liked it, just let it play in the background. You have no idea how much that helps with the algorithms. Seriously, if everyone just watched one extra episode per day, and you don't even have to watch it, just put it on in the background, and we would just skyrocket in the numbers, and it would encourage YouTube to get out and say, Just something to think about. Anyway, but the Managua Ipico episode from several days ago, David, who was with us and helped with the filming, and is the one who pulled me out when the horse tried to sit on me, he and his friend Lester were hanging out on the beach, and so we got to hang out with them for a while. So we were on the beach for a while, but we could not stay late, and it really sucks because this is Saturday night. This is the big night on the beach, especially in Las Penitas. So our friend Franklin is playing at Faro Beach, which is it's not a new restaurant, but it is, I believe, new owners and new style and everything. They're suddenly, they've been like a place no one goes to, and now they're like really active, and he's playing there. So it would have been cool to see him play. It would have been cool to check out the venue now. And then it is, there's several places that friends of ours are doing things around town tonight. And then it's the dance night at Pelican Surf. And we're like, we want to do all of this. This would be fantastic. Friday, Saturday night out on the beach is so great. And there was a good crowd on the beach tonight, but with the video needing to be done and the stuff needing to be done tomorrow, it was not possible. So we're really bummed that we didn't get to stay and do that stuff. We drove back to Sutiava, and I spent the evening recording and editing and uploading the video that you guys saw yesterday. And of course, we've had all these audio issues. So today, again, I'm recording on the boom mic instead of using the lavalier. Hopefully, we have no other problems with it. And it will be in a few days that I actually have time to do experiments with the mic and try to figure out exactly what's having the problem and if it's something I can address or not, or how I need to address it. So that's why it looks and sounds and everything the way that it does today. So I apologize that these are so bland. Working on it, this is really tough. And I know whenever I do these, people say, these videos would be way better and less boring if you showed the places you were at. I absolutely know. We don't always have time to go out and film all those things. We do our best. It is very hard sometimes with the schedule. And I know it seems like, can't you just carry around a camera? No, I really can't. When I don't have a single moment to deal with just the driving and getting people from place to place, like I often go the entire day without being able to look at my phone. So just people getting messages to me can be really hard. I can't even come close to pulling a camera out many days. So I know it seems not like my lifestyle. Like, don't you always have a camera? Can't you always go out and film? You see me working really hard to take the camera out and film for you. Now, I am hoping that with the new Sony ZV-1 that has come, that I'm going to be able to get more footage in more situations more easily and increase that, specifically address some of that. But we have no idea when we're going to be able to get that from the States. It's waiting for me in Houston. It could be up to 6 months before we're able to get it here. The only time we know we're going to have the accessibility to get it is at Christmas. So that's most of a year away. We're hoping that there's some way to get it here before then, but no guarantees. All right, so that was our day. I think it was a good tour. I think we got them a lot of good information. It filled in a lot of gaps about what they were picturing, what the options are, how far things are, which things matter to them. And that's really the goal of these types of tours, I think, is to help answer all these questions so that you can start focusing on what actually matters, right? Determining the beach that you want, the actual part of the country, the type of house you want, the way to think about it. And we have throughout the day tons of discussion about building materials and cost of taxes and just all these different aspects of things, and being able to put that together so that in a very short time you can grasp Nicaragua as a culture and a location and make reasonable decisions that will make sense for you in the future. All right, so the other part we're going to talk about is the Verizon cell phone. So the couple that's here specifically, we were unable to make contact both yesterday when we were trying to pick them up and today when we were trying to coordinate getting to them. They weren't on the Wi-Fi yet, which they could have been, and that's when they got them on is when we were able to make contact. But they have Verizon, and they're spending, and this blows my mind, $10 per day for the Verizon International calling plan so that you're able to travel and make calls and have data and stuff internationally. And I've been aware of this because I used to be on Verizon before I came to my senses about 10 years ago, 12, 15 years ago. Oh, probably just over 10 years ago. And the big story that we have personally is we had traveled internationally a few times. We've been on Verizon for 20 years. I had gotten onto the first Verizon plan under a different name, but it turned into Verizon. I was on a continuous plan since 1992. So it was 20 years. It was 2012, and we were in Europe, and we had done some traveling and used the Verizon phone, and it had always had some problems. But back then, everyone had problems traveling. Like it was hard. We went to Europe in 2012, and it was we had to pay this outrageous fee to Verizon, but I had a really good job at the time, so we didn't think about it too much. And everything was still expensive back then with cell phones, so we didn't think about that too much. And it was such a problem that they couldn't make the normal Verizon phones work. They had to give us a Vodafone loaner phone from Europe to use in Europe while we were there. And one of the things that came out of that was during our 2012 trip, which was our long backpacking trip with our children when they were very little, we went all over Europe, and we were dangerously out of contact because Verizon and Vodafone were unable to reliably make and receive calls, emails, texts, anything. It was completely unreliable. It was outrageously expensive. We had dedicated hardware just for using in Europe from the European branch of Verizon, and they still couldn't get us a call. We would go an entire day and then find out there was an emergency, that someone was trying to reach me, and I had been watching my phone and nothing was going on. And it would turn out that it would turned off all communications and gave no alerting to that. So you would wait, you'd have to reboot the phone, and suddenly all these messages would come in, and then it would immediately shut off again. And they had no idea. They could never fix it. It's just how they worked. And every person I've talked to in the more than decade since has had the same experience, that they have to pay an outrageous amount for Verizon, and when they get there, it just doesn't work. Consistently, I have never once encountered a person with a working phone internationally that was a Verizon. Ever. It is, to the best of my knowledge, an absolute scam that they're not even trying to give you international calling, not trying to give you international data, and they're charging this outrageous amount of money for it. So I want to run some of these numbers. So first of all, T-Mobile, and basically every other carrier on earth, provides international calling. Maybe not in their base plan, but they provide it in some plan. And T-Mobile, it's like in the base plan. So we moved to T-Mobile from Verizon because of that trip. Verizon completely took advantage of us. They didn't give us our money back. The whole thing was a scam. The phone was a scam. The service was a scam, all of it. And it was not the first time we had traveled with Verizon. And so we had given them the benefit of the doubt in previous ones, but we didn't have kids with us in the previous ones, so we weren't quite so angry. We moved off of Verizon, and I also had the problem personally that Verizon didn't work at my office. I worked in central Dallas. The entire middle of Dallas was a dead zone for Verizon. So nowhere near the airport. Anytime we had to pick someone up from the airport, anytime I was at work, I didn't have working cell phone service. It was ridiculous. So moving to T-Mobile was great because they actually cost less. They treated us better, and immediately we were able to do unlimited international everything all the time. Just go anywhere, and it just worked. Just working was crazy to us after the Verizon experience. We had no idea that phones could work this well. Both at home, like suddenly we had working phones. We were so used to the dropped calls and the big gaps in service, but we had always been on Verizon, and everyone always said Verizon was the best. We just kind of accepted it. And 20 years earlier, not really 20, but in around 99 to 2001, I'd actually worked for T-Mobile as they became T-Mobile, and my company was one of the ones putting in the T-Mobile stores in the Northeast. We did a lot of the technology for them, just to roll out, not like the high-level stuff. And we always had to carry Verizon phones at the time because T-Mobile didn't have service. But this was a long time later, and the tables had turned, and it was Verizon who had not had service for a long time. They had never gotten better than like the late 90s, and T-Mobile had shot past them and had coverage. And so when we switched, suddenly it was like, oh, we didn't realize that calls didn't just drop anymore, and we didn't realize that there weren't big gaps in coverage. So once I moved to T-Mobile 11 years ago, phones just worked, and it kind of modernized. So that was a really great experience for us. That was 2012 to 2013 when we switched to T-Mobile. I know I was definitely on T-Mobile by 2013 because when I moved to the Northeast again from Texas, we had been on T-Mobile for some time. I then went back to Europe in 2015 is when we moved there. We moved to Spain. And at that point, we started moving around internationally, and we lived and traveled more or less continuously. So we've put our phones through the paces since that time, and using T-Mobile has been a godsend. It's been so fantastic. We've lived all throughout Europe. We've lived around Latin America, and it just works. It may be slow. It may not be the cheapest. There are ways to potentially lower your cost, but overall, it just works everywhere we go. There's been very specific places where it it didn't work, such as Morocco and Gibraltar, which we knew ahead of time it was not going to work in those places. So we had already made accommodations. They list which countries it works in, which is nearly all of them. And the ones it doesn't work in are places that everyone has problems. Like they're just challenges. And it's not like a Verizon phone is going to work there. That wasn't going to work in England. That's not going to work in Germany. That's not going to work in Mexico, right? It barely works in the United States. That would be, it's like you'd have to argue pretty heavily with me to try to claim that Verizon works in the US at this point. So we've been really happy with T-Mobile for the most part. You can watch some of my videos from last year. Customer service has just fallen apart, and I definitely want to get away from all American cell phone companies at this point, and I'm very close to having no need for one, but we have experienced some T-Mobile frustrations, all associated with having moved to their business plans. Absolutely don't do that. If you stay on their personal plans, I've yet to experience problems, but if you go to their business plans, you might as well just set your phones on fire. Terrible, terrible idea. And they will try to talk you into it. Don't. Do not let them have that conversation if you have like a family with more people. And so having a phone like T-Mobile is a really big deal for travelers, because those of us who have T-Mobile can simply show up nearly anywhere in the world. We don't have to plan. We don't think about it. And this is important. So first of all, your plan costs less than the Verizons of the world. It's just cheaper to start with. And then all these countries are automatically there and included, and they're on all the time. And they actually work. They actually work in the United States, and they actually work abroad. So for us, when we travel, our kids have T-Mobile numbers. We have everyone has one. We get on a plane and go anywhere. If we get rerouted because of bad weather, we don't care. If we decide we're going to go on to some new place, we land and you know what, this isn't the place we want to be. Let's get on a train, go to the next place. We don't care. We don't have to think about our phones. Our phones always work. We're always getting calls. We're always getting text. We're always getting email. We're always getting WhatsApp. We're always getting Instagram. All those things are continuous everywhere we go. That's really huge. And we've done it for so long, and most people we know have done it for so long, that we forget that there are people who are still in the dark ages of cell phones and can't talk to other carriers and can't move from country to country. It's not something we even think about. So that's really big deal. And I know if you're just taking a vacation and you're never going anywhere, and it's your first time going somewhere, and you're kind of like, can I really switch my phone plan just for a 2-week vacation? No, you probably can't. Although I would suggest looking in to see if it isn't a better deal for you. But for you, there are options. And this is where some of this math is important. So even if T-Mobile didn't exist, Verizon is charging $10 per day. So let's say this takes 12 days. You're gonna go on vacation for 2 weeks. After 12 days, you will have spent $120 on a service that does nothing, but you will have spent $120. If you were to take that same money and go into the mall here in Nicaragua, go into the Mi store, which is the Xiaomi store, right? The one it's kind of like the Apple store, but for Xiaomi from China. You can buy brand new for between $110 and $130 a perfectly good entry-level Xiaomi phone. We're talking new from a really good phone maker. It's a very basic phone, but new from a really good maker. And you don't need very much from this, right? This is your 2-week vacation phone. You can then go to Tigo or Claro, and for roughly $3, buy a local phone number with a SIM card. He'll give you about 1 day of service. The important thing is $3 for the number. Then you can buy 15 days of very high bandwidth service, right? Very fast, lots of things included, lots of data, for $6. You've now spent, assuming it's $110 for the phone, you've now spent $120, $119, break even with 12 days of Verizon. But instead of getting nothing, you are getting a brand new phone and a Nicaraguan phone number. The next 2 days of your 14-day vacation are now free. And for all this time, you've had super high-speed data, super reliable, and you have a Nicaraguan number, so you're able to do things that you're not able to do with a Verizon number, such as use Hugo and Pedidos Ya to order food. You're probably not going to do that on your vacation, but you have the option now. You could make a call to someone in Nicaragua. I have no idea why you would do that, but if you needed to, you could. Instead of a super slow foreign service that just trickles out data just enough to claim you have service, you're going to have LTE 4.5, 300 megabits per second, better than your home internet back in the United States in most cases, on your cell phone. You're going to have the best coverage. You're going to have super amount of options. And if you ever come back, if you extend your stay, whatever, you own a phone. You don't have to buy that again. You own the SIM card. You don't have to buy that again. Anytime you're going to be here, you can buy 15 days for $6. And if you're not going to be here that long, you can buy like 7 days for $4, right? You have this flexibility to simply buy the days that you're going to be here for almost nothing. If you're going to be here full time, you're going to want to do that anyway. And it's going to be $12 a month. And that's it, just $12. And so just running this math, the Verizon process is so expensive. It's absurd how much they charge. Even if it worked really well, it's not a sensible number. But it doesn't work well. It doesn't work at all, it seems. So this is a kind of thinking outside the box. Americans are very taught, especially because it's Verizon and T-Mobile, they want you to think this way, that you have to have just one phone, that you have to have an American number, that you have to use that when you're abroad, that you have to pay them or depend on them for that foreign service. None of that's true. Other people from other countries typically go to a new country, pop out their SIM card, pop in a new SIM card from that country, and use a local number when they're doing that. And that makes life really easy because you're getting all the same prices, all the same identity as a local user, and so you're not being discriminated against by being on another tier of service or by having a foreign number or whatever, and it doesn't confuse people. So getting into that habit as part of traveling to be like, oh, I'm just going to get a local number, do this thing, can be fantastic. Or you're going to get a local-ish number. Like, for example, you can get Claro here, and you get an all Latin America package or an all Central American package, and you can get ones that include Europe. So they kind of work like T-Mobile. And Tigo offers a lot of stuff like that too, being a European phone service provider. They're from Luxembourg. Claro is from Mexico. No one is from Nicaragua. And so that's thinking outside the box like that may help a lot with taking travel and making it less stressful, making it make more sense, and understanding how other people are doing it, whether it's other Americans just get on T-Mobile and deal with, yes, when we're on T-Mobile, our service in country is much slower. It's noticeably slow compared to Tigo, but it works. And our coverage isn't quite as good, but it's good. And if we need to use Pedito's job, we're out of luck because they just will not accept someone without a Nicaragua phone number tied to it. So that's unfortunate. For those of us who are just vacationing, whatever. For those of us who are here all the time, it gets to be a big deal. So you will definitely want, if you're going to spend anything more than, say, 2 weeks, you'll absolutely want a Nicaraguan number. It's so cheap. It's such an easy thing to do. And for a lot of people, if you're on something modern like an iPhone, you can put the SIM card in. You don't have to give up your T-Mobile. You don't have to get a second phone. You don't have that $110 cost. If you have a two SIM phone, or you have an eSIM phone like the iPhones and the Samsungs, you can move your T-Mobile into the eSIM's location and then just pop in and out in the extra one. And even those, like the Tigo, you can move that into an eSIM. So you can still have a third one if you travel somewhere else. Like, it gets a lot of flexibility. So learning about that and taking a minute to really understand what your options are as far as that will help a lot in travel. And it honestly, this hit me that it's been so long since I had to deal with someone being out of contact in that way. It didn't occur to me that Verizon was still unable to provide service and charging as if this was a unique thing that wasn't just included with every other phone provider anywhere. So the amount of backwards on this actually caught me off guard. I've been away from the US and away from Verizon long enough that I've forgotten how much in the dark ages a lot of people are stuck with, and they don't even know because Verizon's the biggest carrier. It seems like, how could they be so far behind both T-Mobile and Mexico? But they are. So thanks for joining me. Please remember to like and subscribe. You can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Scott Allen Miller. That helps a lot. Thank you so much to everyone who does that. I do watch that all the time, and every time it just hits me that people are contributing to the show in that way. It's so fantastic. And those contributions are what allowed us to get that new Sony ZV-1, which of course we don't have yet, but we will soon. And what are going to help us get the new, we're planning on getting a Tascam studio recording so we can get really up the audio when we're doing this kind of stuff. And we have a carpenter working on a whole new studio wall. So instead of quilts, we're going to have something actually custom designed. Although these are pretty cool, but I think we can up the game a bit. That Buy Me a Coffee is really what makes that possible. So thank you to all of our sponsors. What a difference that has made. And if you're interested in the tours, like we talked about earlier, info@relocatenicaragua.com. There will be a website sometime in the future, but right now it's just an email. Just shoot an email and be super patient. We are so overwhelmed because, like, when I do these tours, that's 3 entire days that I can't even open my email. If there's an emergency, I'll see it, or someone will text me, but I'm really isolated. When doing this stuff, I can only do so many things. And in case case it hasn't come through, I'm only getting 2 to 4 hours of sleep per night for the last 2 weeks. I had one day of 5 hours, and it was the most amazing thing. So I'm hoping right after this recording that I'm able to pull off another 5 hours to do a little bit of recovery, but I'm at a point where I'm getting ill from a lack of sleep. Like I'm actually physically ill from not sleeping, and I'm starting to get like narcolepsy where I'm just passing out without realizing it. So when I say I'm running out of time, I've had not one free moment to have a conversation in the last week. So seriously, please be patient with the emails. I am trying my best to get to them. Hopefully tomorrow I will be able to get to, or Monday, which will feel like tomorrow to you guys when you're watching the video, I'll be able to get to a ton of them and do a bunch of catch up. I do try to see what's on there as best as I can, at least every 48 hours. And as always, share with your friends, tell your family, post on all those social media outlets that you guys may be playing with, and check out all the NikaLoro.com, NikaGram.com, and if you're going to be here in country, NikaRoomba.com for finding the latest events to go to, concerts, shows, plays, whatever. That's where you find it. Thanks for joining me. I will see all of you tomorrow.